So here we are, Act 5, Scene 2, our last scene in Othello. So we have definitely some important, like stylistic things to think about here, but we are also certainly looking at plot and what finally happens to our characters. So we start out Scene 2 with the soliloquy from Othello. And here we get kind of his final, or one of his final ideas on morality and his reflection on what he's about to do. So this is a soliloquy as he's about to go in to kill Desdemona, and he's thinking about this. And he's thinking about it very seriously, which is interesting because, we have been talking throughout this play about how emotion can overcome reason, and that's what's happening with Othello. Like, he's getting so emotional about this. He even had seizures. He was so emotional. So with Othello now, this is a very reasoned argument, which I don't know if that is Shakespeare trying to say that maybe it's not all just emotion, and that it partially has to do with who we are and who we can reason with, how we reason, or if the idea is that emotion can be so overwhelming, but also so sneaky in a way, because if you get super emotional, then you might try to justify your actions in your head with reason. That's the way emotion controls you, is that it doesn't eliminate reason, it just makes your reason follow your emotions. I don't know, interesting thought. But so he starts talking about the cause, the reason he's doing this, and he doesn't want to name it to the chaste stars because it's so bad. What she did is so bad that he doesn't want to name it. But it's interesting here that he says, "I'll not shed her blood, nor scar that whiter skin of hers than snow." And it's smooth as monumental alabaster. So he's still talking about her as beautiful, and talking about her like perfect alabaster white skin. And I think that's important, is that he sees her as this kind of perfect being, and he doesn't want to shed her blood or scar that skin. And to me, this is kind of showing that he wants to preserve this idea of her, of this as this perfect woman is the most important thing to him. Interestingly, it is more important to him, this idea of her, than her herself, right? He can't grow to accept her for a mistake she may have made, or even just, let her go on living, but um, decide to divorce her or whatever. He has to kill her for this because he has to maintain that image of her. It's almost as if, um, because he says here, "She must die, else she'll betray more men." Like, he's kind of saying he has to kill her. It's almost his duty to kill her. So we see here, this for me, and you might have a different opinion, but this for me is an argument for Othello. We've talked a little bit about morality, and we use the D&D alignment for that. Um, an argument that he's still lawful, at least, if nothing else. We don't know like where on the good to evil spectrum he is, but lawful, like he still sees what he's about to do as necessary for justice. And he says that a little bit later, because when he goes down to like get near her, he kisses her right after, and as he gets close to her, he is, like still thinking about how beautiful she is. And he says, "It doth almost persuade justice to break her sword." So he's calling what he's doing justice. He's saying that what I'm doing is what's right. Um, so again, is that really what he thinks? Or is that him justifying his actions? That's kind of up for interpretation. But he is talking about the seriousness of the action, that um, I can't, once I take out this light, I can't relight it. Once I pluck the rose, I can't grow it again. Like, this is it. And he's thinking about that. So Desdemona wakes up, and they have this conversation. He finally confronts her about giving the handkerchief to Cassio and blah, blah, blah. And she, of course, denies everything. And, he doesn't believe her. So she tries to even persuade him, "Don't kill me tonight." And, wait half an hour. And I almost think that maybe that's her trying to be able to prove her innocence by staining the wedding sheets, like prove her virginity to him. But uh, he says no. It's now. We have to do it now. So he smothers her. Let's get down there. So let's find where that happens. Right here. He smothers her. And of course, just in Shakespeare's fashion, he smothers her. And then right then is when Emilia knocks on the door. So Emilia comes just after she needs to be there. And she is coming to the door because she needs to tell Othello about what has just happened, that Roderigo's dead and Cassio has been attacked. So Emilia knocks on the door, and he eventually he Othello is kind of confused and like because he's just done this thing, and then he lets her in. And he hears the news, and he's like, "Oh no, Cassio's not dead," and he's upset about that. But then we hear, now remember, Desdemona is smothered, right? But oh, she has another line. Oh, falsely, falsely murdered. So I don't know. In Shakespeare, people die very slowly, and maybe that's what's happening here. Maybe he like crushed her windpipe, and she still like has one last breath to get out. I don't know, but she has a line, and she says she's falsely murdered. A guiltless death I die. And Amelia runs to her side and is like, "What's happening? Who did this?" And Desdemona says, "Nobody. I myself. Farewell. Condemn me to my kind, or commend me to my kind lord." And then she actually dies. So now she's really dead. Um, but what's interesting is her last line. Like Desdemona is like the only person in history who gets murdered and then is able to tell someone who her murderer was. But she doesn't. She says, "I did it myself. Commend me to my kind lord." So again, as Desdemona said in Act Four, she said that unkindness may defeat my life, but never my love. She is holding steady to that. She is faithful to Othello, literally no matter what. Othello just killed her, and she is still protecting Othello and still loyal to him and not telling anyone what happened. So let's be clear. Um, this is supposed to be an example of her being like this perfect woman, perfect loyalty. But let's be clear that that's not true. That um, you can't protect people who abuse you, and you should not protect people who abuse you. And I think that's kind of the point here. We have Desdemona behaving this way, but then we have a foil of Desdemona in Emilia, who does not behave this way, as we will see. So Desdemona, it seems ridiculous, right, that she would protect Othello, but we know that's a thing that happens, that people protect their abusers, um, because that's a kind of a psychological issue that happens when someone's abused. And this is not a big pattern. Obviously, this happened in a matter of like days, basically, weeks at most. But yet, Desdemona is behaving this way. So, Desdemona is the perfect woman in a cultural sense, but that culture is destructive to women. And so, Amelia, while breaking the rules of womanhood at this time, it is less destructive. So that happens to Desdemona. And then, so Othello's like, "Oh, how should she be murdered?" And Amelia's like, "Who knows?" And he said, "You heard her say it wasn't me." And she said, "She said that." And Othello's like, "She's a liar. I did it." So Othello, again, he's super emotional right now. And he also is still upholding the law. Like he's now upset at Desdemona for lying, even though her lie was to protect him. But he's holding this rigid view of morality, that she lied, and that since she cheated on me, it's okay that I killed her. So Amelia's super upset, obviously. And then Othello mentions the reason that he killed her, and he says that Iago is the one who, told him. And so Emilia is like, "Iago said that? My husband said that?" And then so she's like, if that's true, then he's a liar. Like, she does not support Iago saying this. And even though Othello draws a sword on her, she leaves. She yells for people, yells for help to get Othello in trouble. So Emilia calls for help. Help comes in, and including Iago, and eventually the truth comes out because Emilia, when she hears the handkerchief is the central object of this, then she, because she knows that she's the one who took it. It wasn't that Desdemona gave it away. So Emilia has some great lines that I love. I'm maybe thinking about making some of her lines a tattoo at some point. But she says, "I will not charm my tongue. I am bound to speak." Iago tells her to stop talking. Um, but she won't. "I will not charm my tongue. I am bound to speak. My mistress here lies murdered in her bed." So she is going to speak because to protect her mistress, to protect Desdemona. And so yeah, Emilia figures it out and tells on Iago. And so Iago actually pulls a sword on her, to make her to not talk. And she does anyway. She does not care that Iago has a sword on her. So, and he ends up stabbing her. So Desdemona's dead on the bed. She's smothered. Iago stabs Emilia for telling the truth. And then they lay Emilia on the bed next to Desdemona as she dies. And Othello finally realizes what's happened and he goes to attack Iago. But people disarm him. And then Iago leaves. They go chase him down. And so now we're left with just Othello, and he's kind of trapped in the room. They're guarding the door, not letting him leave. And Othello has realized that he has been lied to. So Emilia dies on the bed. Othello calls people in, and to kind of end this. So everything's coming to a head, basically. And now everyone comes back in. They have found Iago, and now everyone's here. So Emilia and Desdemona are on the bed. Othello's there. Iago's there, like probably in handcuffs or something, something similar to that. He's like being restrained. They bring Cassio in, Lodovico, Gratiano. Like everyone is there to kind of figure out what the heck just happened. And Othello stabs Iago, but doesn't kill him. And let's just kind of skip to the end where Othello kind of says his last piece. So Othello says, "Before you take me away, I'm arrested, obviously. But before you take me away, let me say some things." So he, at the end, is trying to tell his story. He's like, when you relate this to everyone else, when you tell what happened here, I want you to remember this. And he wants the opportunity to be able to kind of frame the story of what happened himself. So he calls himself someone who loved not wisely, but too well. One not easily jealous, but perplexed in the extreme. And I don't know. Do y'all believe? I mean, that's kind of up for your interpretation. Is that true of Othello? We saw at the beginning how dispassionate he was, how he was so calm and level-headed. So he calls himself not easily jealous. I don't know. Is it a cultural thing? Like at the time, in Shakespeare's day, would we consider him not easily jealous that he really had all this evidence and was made jealous even though he isn't easily jealous? Or was he easily jealous? He doesn't see himself as easily jealous. He sees this as something being worked upon him. But he also has this other idea of justice. So now he realizes that he has done something terrible. He's killed someone who is innocent, and someone he loves, apparently. I don't know if, I wouldn't call that love. But so he says, he tells this kind of story, and he uses this analogy to talk about what's happened and what he's about to do. So he's about to kill himself. We see here he stabbed himself, and so he talks about this. And this has taken me a long time to figure out. And I think this is what this means. This is a ending monologue by Othello, so it's important. But what does he mean here? He says, in Aleppo once, where a malignant and a turbaned Turk beat a Venetian and traduced the state, I took by the throat the circumcised dog and smote him thus. So, and then he stabbed himself. So he's obviously talking about, he says, I smote a malignant and a turbaned Turk. So he's almost separating himself and then he's killing himself. So both things he's talking about, I'm the one who killed this person and this person is me. So he is referring to himself as a malignant and a turbaned Turk, but he's also saying he's the one who killed that person. It's almost like he sees these two parts of himself. There's this good side and this bad side, and this bad side is the malignant and the turbaned Turk. So we're seeing again more of that stereotypes even coming from himself. He's saying that there's this part of him that is this bad thing, and it's related to race in a sense. And he's like, I, Othello, the real me, whatever that is, have killed this person by killing himself. So again, it's this idea, just like he killed Desdemona for justice, he's killing himself for justice. And let's be clear here also that killing yourself is never justice, no matter what you have done. Just like killing Desdemona, even if she had done a bad thing, was not going to justify, not going to correct the problem. Neither is Othello killing himself fixing anything. In a sense, it's like avoiding the shame of what's happened. It's not justifying or fixing anything, but that is what he is saying here is he is justified in this by um, or that he is going to fix this problem by killing himself, which again is never accurate. And so that's how he does it. So then our question then is that at the end of this play, um, what is Othello's morality? Is Othello a good person or not? Um, and I mean, it's easy. Yaga's a bad person, yeah, but is Othello a good person or not? And that's one of the questions of the play that we get often is Othello a racist play or not? Is Othello the character playing into the stereotypes, or is he working against them? What is the saying about Othello? Uh, that's that's an interesting question that we wrestle with this play. So at the end, just like most Shakespeare tragedies, we are left with it says here, look at the tragic loading of this bed. So Ludwig was saying this, we're left with Desdemona, Emilia, and Othello all laying on the bed dead. And so at the end of a tragedy, we often have that like a pile of dead bodies, basically. So I don't think anyone really won here. That's the point of a tragedy. And that is Othello.